Are you a leader navigating burnout, doubt, or growth? Welcome to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast, where intentional leadership creates lasting impact. Hi, I'm Jen Brown with my co-host Hugo Rodriguez, and we're diving into real leadership stories and practical insights to help you lead with clarity, courage, and connection. Because we believe great leadership creates positive ripples at work and in life.
Hello to our listeners. I'm Jen Brown, a leadership coach with Journey of Grace Coaching and a former U.S. diplomat with the Department of State, where I spent over 20 years and had the privilege of working with my good friend and colleague, Hugo Rodriguez. Hugo, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. As Jen mentioned, my name is Hugo Rodriguez, and I am also a retired diplomat, and I totally enjoyed working with Jen over our long career with the State Department. I'm currently a professor of practice in leadership and a leadership coach, and I am thrilled to be on this conversation with Jen today. Jen, what are we going to talk about today?
We have a special guest. Someone I will also say has become a dear friend over the last year since I transitioned out of the State Department. We have Blake Holman. And Blake is a seasoned technology and leadership executive with over 20 years of experience as a CIO and advisor to mid-market and growth-oriented organizations. And what's super cool is that Blake works at the intersection of technology, leadership, and influence. That's a space we all need to understand more of. And he helps leaders to navigate complexity, make better decisions, and close the growing gap between information and wisdom. I need some of that. I don't know about you all. Blake and I met actually through the John Maxwell Leadership Program, and he is a leadership coach, speaker, and trusted advisor who focuses on practical and ethical leadership in an AI-enabled world. So this is a topic we have been dying to learn more about. But before we jump into AI, Blake, welcome to Ripple Effect Leadership. Thank you for being on here with us. Tell us a little bit about your journey in leadership and the information world.
Well, first off, thank you all very much for the opportunity to join you today. Hugo, love your haircut.
I'm a fan of yours as well.
Yes. No, my journey is an interesting one. I started out as an engineer in school, found myself in the consulting world, worked my way into corporate IT, and as I was working with my teams, realized that although technology is part of everything we do, it's really all about the people. So became a student of influence with Dr. Robert Cialdini out at Arizona State University and his Influence at Work organization. Been a student of his work for over 20 years. And then, as you said, joining the John Maxwell team and really becoming more deeply ingrained in leadership principles and things like that has really, really expanded my mind on the people aspects of the things that we do in really every discipline, not just technology.
So that's
I love it. It's interesting for us. We went into foreign affairs and likewise found out it's really all about people. And that was kind of the beginning for me. I hesitate to say, but for Jen as well, where greatness happens through the action and empowerment of others. And so it sounds like you encountered the same thing in the information space.
Absolutely. It's been a great epiphany, actually.
So tell us a little bit more about how people come together in the information space, because I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Sometimes it has felt that the people working in the information space are so they're experts, right? In a very technical space. And that's hard to communicate across those lines, if you will, to users like me. So how do you build that influence across the divide in quotes?
Yeah, so I think the part of it is understanding where the human fits. As an engineer myself, I love solving problems. And in the physical world, there are laws like laws of physics and chemistry and all that kind of stuff that are pretty well formed, and we understand how things behave. And if something's not behaving right, we can pretty much get at the root of it and figure out why, and then solve it. people are a different matter. We have brains, and we have ways of thinking, and we have perspectives, we have points of view, and they are oftentimes very different than our own, but they're not necessarily right or wrong. They're just different. And so taking a step back, understanding that, figuring out how we can respect that, navigate it, put it to good use, and do so in a collaborative and productive manner, I think is where organizations really have some great opportunities to shine.
I love it. I love it. People are interesting, right? And that's the challenge of leadership, is kind of understanding their individual quirks and needs and strengths and challenges and all of that stuff. And that goes across so many different realms. So I work in academia now, and AI is a topic in every conversation. And Jen and I have been talking about the impacts of AI for leadership and for kind of interhuman communications. So thrilled to have you join us, Blake, and to get your perspective on these things. Tell me how you see AI impacting sort of the leadership and human connection.
Oh geez, where do I start? My industry colleagues may criticize me for this perspective, but I am a bit of a realist, and I don't necessarily believe in all the hype that we're seeing out in the market today. So I just want to preface my statements with that. I believe that human beings are still at the center of this new wave of technology. I see AI or generative AI as a tool, and even its agentic forms and some of the advancements that we're seeing in the market today, it's still just a tool. There are some very repetitive, computer-focused tasks that I think the AI tools can replicate and possibly replace. There's a lot of things that AI can't even touch. And I think the powerful moments we have as human beings are where we can embrace the tools as an extension of ourselves to amplify and create leverage on the things that we do. I think John Maxwell actually put it best at the conference that Jen and I were at back in August. He was talking about some new books he's writing and how he was using the AI tools to help him. And, of course, people in the audience are like, John, you're like 78. Do you even know what AI is, right? And he was kind of making fun of himself in the process. There was a little Q&A session, and an AI researcher was in the audience, came up to him and said, all right, I'm an AI researcher. I'm really interested. How are you using these tools, John? He kind of sits back and he says, well, let me start by saying AI is going to make lazy people lazier and smart people smarter. I mean, you could almost hear this gasp in the audience as he said that. And he went on to say, let me explain that. For people who are looking for the answer faster, and that's where they're going to stop, those are the lazy people getting lazier. But for people that want to really add value to others, they're using the tools to establish their starting point faster so that they can add more value to what they do. And I think where I've really embraced the AI tools is as my thought partner. Not something to do it for me, something to help me do it better. And so every engagement that I have with an AI tool now is about helping me do something better and at the same time faster than I could possibly do it on my own. Actually, sometimes it's not necessarily faster because the deterministic nature of the models, we get into a long conversation, I actually work myself into the ditch, and then I've got to start over and, away we go. But my point being is we should embrace these tools as an extension of ourselves. Hugo, I think you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I love the thought. I'm wondering can you give me an example of that? How does that look? What does that look like in real life?
Oh, geez, which example do I pick? So I'm exploring some concepts around leadership development where I think there's some basic principles that are at play. So I'll use a tool like ChatGPT, for example, and say I'm thinking about scenario X. I'm doing a workshop next week in a small town here in Texas. Here is the topic. Here's some of the key messaging. I'd really like for this to appeal to people. I have a tendency to take a teaching posture, which people don't necessarily like to be taught to. So, help me think through this about how I could appeal to people and meet them where they are in terms of problems they may be trying to solve for this particular principle I'm exploring. So then I get back a bunch of perspectives, gives me an opportunity to think more deeply, and then ask more questions. What I'm finding is that the questions I ask give me some great thought partnership, which create more questions and more depth and more understanding, so that I'm actually advancing my knowledge much faster by engaging the AI tools as a thought partner.
So this raises a question for me. And honestly, coming from the government, only within the last year did I really start to dive into AI. So I feel like the government has been really kind of behind in that space. Or at least that was my perspective. So as I started diving in, of course, I went to chat, and then I learned about Claude and Perplexity. And I'll be honest, I use all three and I bounce ideas between the three. And then they learn my tone. But what one says is professional maybe isn't the way that I see professional, right? And so taking advantage of what's out there. But here's the question then. I have to be ethical in deciding what is it that I am going to use and deliver and fact check. Because as much as ChatGPT knows me, sometimes it comes up with these weird facts about my career that never happened. So how do ethics play a role in AI?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. And ethics really plays a role in everything that we do, whether we're using a tool like ChatGPT or not, right? We can talk to another person who's making stuff up, and if we believe it, well, we're just as culpable as if we believe something that ChatGPT has made up. Dr. Robert Cialdini referred to tools like ChatGPT as parahuman technologies. Human beings have built them. They have trained them with human experience. Why would we think they would be anything less than a human-like technology? So we have to understand that. Again, I treat it as if we are talking to some other people in our world. They just happen to not be people. They happen to be machines. And so at the end of the day, we have to own the output and the outcome as human beings. You've got to, validate things that are there. Things are going to resonate with you or not. I heard someone recently refer to what thought leadership was, and they said a great technique for doing thought leadership is to take a thought and put it on a piece of paper and say, all right, if it's something you agree with, great, what would you add to that? And that's thought leadership. At the same time, you could take a thought that maybe you didn't agree with and then say, all right, why do I not agree with that? What would it take for me to agree with it, if that's even possible, which is another form of thought leadership. That reflection on a thought is what gives us the opportunity for growth. And chat, using a tool like chat is no different. At the end of the day, though, when we own the outcome, we own the output, it's like signing our name to something. It's something that we believe in, and if it's not true, but we still believe in it, one might ask the question, is it true? It becomes our perspective. That's an interesting element of us as human beings.
That is a fascinating way of using ChatGPT. One of my concerns, I guess, is ChatGPT is a large language model, right? So it is basically the accumulation of what that company has been able to scrape from human experience, mostly online.
Right.
So when you use the example of using a large language model to be a thought partner with you, I love that, because it's like having a bunch of people in the room with you for pressure testing your thinking and helping you branch out your thinking. And then Jen brings in the point that what happens when it starts making stuff up? It's like not entirely true, or, this is kind of the nice edge on this. When I'm teaching a group of 20 to 22-year-olds, and they have this tool available to them, the challenge that I see, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is are these like, what is the risk of them simply imbibing someone else's accumulated thought and reflecting it as their own in the classroom? It's the lazy getting lazier, right? So how would you, in that scenario, coach them towards the more ethical side of AI? Use this to, like, gym reps to help you get stronger, not to allow your mental capacity to atrophy. Does that make sense? And how do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I, as I'm getting up there in my years, the scenario that you've just described is not a foreign concept, right? I mean, students for years have had resources available to them that they've readily copied, and they just move on to the next whatever it is. It's just that they can do it much faster and cheaper now. I mean, I think we all probably remember Encyclopedia Britannica. Great resource of information. And I, probably guilty of it myself somewhere along the way. If I had to write something, I'd, copy a paragraph and include it in there and probably not reference it properly. I think that the approach is to lean into the add value perspective. Now, one of the challenges with a tool like chat, though, is you can ask it the same question multiple times and get different answers. That is fundamentally the deterministic nature of it. So to be able to take something and go, oh yeah, chat wrote this, yeah, you kind of have a feeling about it, but you may not necessarily be able to prove it.
So I love that you say that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's exactly something that I found as I dump my thoughts in. I ask for some help in organizing and all of that, and it will pull something back, and I'm like, you've missed this nuance. And then I put it in, and it's scary how chat will say, that's why you're the strategic one, or something like that. And I'm like, why are you talking to me that way? Right. But it's really, as you said, putting the information, getting that information there, seeing the variations that come from it. And I'm wondering, how are leaders in what you're seeing, especially in the tech world, how are leaders embracing that possibility of multiple answers?
Well, when we deal with people, I have felt for years, of course, a boss of mine said it a little more crass than this, but junk in equals junk out, right?
Yeah.
I said it in a context of something yesterday, that if I'm working with someone and I have requested something and I don't get back what I wanted, I have to ask myself the question, was I clear with what I asked, right? And if I'm not clear enough about what I asked for, I need to look in the mirror first when I am wanting to criticize someone for not getting what I wanted. I will also say that in the absence of information, people will oftentimes make stuff up. So if we haven't given chat enough information for a particular problem, why would we expect it to not make something up when it's trying to connect the dots, just like a person would? So all of those things, back to your question, I think that's one of the missing links for leaders, is how to engage with this parahuman technology. I think people treat it like a program. You have input, there's processing, and there's output. That's the world of computer programming, and has been for 60, 70 years. This technology is like a person. You have to give it more data, more context, more perspective, so that you can non-programmatically get some of the outcomes that you would desire, just the same you would with a person. So that's where I think the leadership skills really, really come into play. We as leaders, we get more out of our teams of people when we lead them well. And I believe the same thing is true of a technology like generative AI. We can get better outcomes when we can employ leadership principles in interacting with these tools the same way we would with people. And think about this too. We don't do a good enough job in the working world today of coaching and training our leaders. We do zero job of coaching and training individual contributors in leadership principles. We are now putting a parahuman technology in the hands of every individual contributor in the workplace with no training, no coaching. So,
Okay, that's a light bulb for me.
yeah,
You were
so that begs
saying
a big question.
it's our job to lead Chat GPT, Perplexity, Claude, whatever AI you're using.
Amen.
That's a whole new perspective right there. Hugo.
Yeah, say more about that. Like, I
Kind
let
of went
me.
on a little rant there. Sorry about that.
No, I like it. I love it. I love it. So, yeah, I'm really interested in where we go from there, and I will just add in the element that there are coaching chatbots now, right? And that people use agentic AI as a coach in with some pretty positive results. And how do you factor that into what you were just saying?
Uh, I think there is some value in them. And I'll just say some. The same way that you can have a meaningful conversation with someone over email, right? But it is not the same as sitting in front of a person and being able to see their facial expression, their body language, hear their tone of voice. There is something about the human interaction where you get so much more information about the situation and the context to provide meaningful coaching and leadership that, I'm sorry, a chatbot's just not going to do. It cannot replicate that. Period.
We have talked on this podcast before about the physical manifestations of people's reaction to things and the sort of the somatics around coaching and
Yes.
watching how people react and catching the things that they don't even see themselves, right? And yeah, you can't do that over a text. And I would say, it's even hard over Zoom or over video chat, but it's doable, and you can learn to sort of cue into those things.
Yeah, you don't see this nervous tick that I have in my right hand over here.
Right.
Just
The
kidding.
bouncing leg under the table is really hard to see when you're on video chat. But I think that's a really great point, Blake, and I appreciate that. So what are leaders missing? I know you've said that the leadership gap is growing as we move into this AI world. So what are leaders missing, and what do they need to do to reduce that gap?
I think there's a few steps. First off, stop thinking of it as a tool. Stop thinking of it as a program. Think of it like a person. For anybody who is, in a leadership position that has had the benefit of an assistant of some sort that knows how to use that assistant, you know how valuable that assistant can be. And they're, ready, willing, and able to help you with whatever. You just got to give them direction, context, and maybe some room to make some mistakes. We need to do the same thing with chat. Now, I will tell you, admittedly, the first time I was blessed with an assistant, I had no clue how to use an assistant, and I fumbled with it, and I was not effective. Thankfully, it was this wonderful woman, and she sensed that pretty quickly. She's like, "You've never had an assistant before, have you?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." She's like, "Well, let me tell you how you can most effectively use me." And we sat down. She coached me on how to utilize her effectively. She also mothered me a little bit. She would see me doing things and going, "Nope, sorry, I do that, not you." Great experience, and it really, really gave me a lot of perspective. So I think we've got to find a way to coach people on how to use an assistant, whether that assistant is a person or a tool like ChatGPT. That parahuman element, sometimes you're going to get the answer you were looking for. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're going to have to dig deeper. Sometimes you may have to look in the mirror and say, "You know what? Yeah, that's what I asked for, but that's not what I wanted. And you're just going to have to learn on that journey as you go. Now, thankfully, Chat learns about you, Claude learns about you, Perplexity learns about you, just like another person hopefully would. I mean, if they don't last very long. But I think we've got to train and coach people on how to use the parahuman technologies. And the added benefit in the workplace is those skills are all transferable to working with people. You know, that's the ripple effect. If we'll take the time to train and coach people in that realm, we've got some downstream benefits that would be good overall for an organization and for individuals as they continue to grow within those organizations.
So here's something I know I feel, and I think others feel as well, is that, you know, AI is a fast moving train. It's out of the station and it is barreling down the tracks, right?
Yeah.
And you know, like you mentioned earlier, I'm no spring chicken, and so
I'm no spring chicken.
How do we catch this fast moving train? Like what you say makes eminent sense to me. And I want to transfer the skills that I have developed in working with, you know, assistants and management specialists and others, but it's daunting, right?
Yeah.
This is, it seems like a lot. And I know the capacity every day gets bigger and bigger. The ability of the LLMs and the other sort of AI models, capacity is growing. They can do more things. And yet I'm still back here asking it to help me format a letter, right? Any advice along those lines?
I think it's important for people to be met where they are. You know, there's the technology adoption curves, and each one of us as an individual falls on a different place in that curve. Sometimes even with different technologies, right? You may be the kind of person that wants the latest and greatest iPhone, but you know what? You may still be using Multimate as a word processor on your computer. Hopefully not, but still, you get the point. If you think about the construction industry, right? There's new tools coming out all the time, you know, but if I have to dig a hole in my backyard, that doesn't mean that I need to go get a backhoe. Sometimes a shovel is all that I need to solve my problem. So I think it's maintaining that perspective about the problems that you need to solve that are going to make a difference for you. And how do you advance those things in your change adoption journey? Because not everyone can accept and adopt change as fast as other people can. Some people like to make changes in leaps and bounds. They've got, you know, technology ADD or change adoption ADD, whatever the case may be. And there's other people that are, you know, somewhat risk averse. They want to go slow and easy. And I totally respect that for everyone. So I think it's largely a personal choice, a personal journey. And thankfully, the technology has the ability to meet people where they are if they embrace it the right way. It's going to help that person that needs just a little help. And it may help that, and it's going to equally help that person that needs a lot if they engage it the right way and have the right perspective about some of its potential limitations.
So I want to jump in on that because I think this applies right in the workforce with leaders using AI with their teams in a way to be effective in learning what's available to them and then using what they need, right? Going back to what Hugo mentioned in academia, I have a son in college. He asked me over a break last year to take a look at one of his papers. And so I'm a good editor thanks to my years in government. And I'm editing and he's like, Mom, I can't make these edits because she will then think that my paper's too perfect and that AI did this. I need to bake in mistakes. Yeah, exactly. Hugo's face says it all. I was like flabbergasted. You have to bake in mistakes, grammatical mistakes, punctuation, all of this stuff so that the professor doesn't think that AI did this paper. So that to me sounds ludicrous. I'm wondering how in academia, in the workforce, we embrace AI along with the challenges, the coaching challenge of go deeper.
Yeah.
Use your brain to go deeper in what AI gave you.
Yeah. May I comment?
Yes.
I do think that that's ludicrous. I do also think that that's ludicrous. My dad was a college professor for almost 50 years, taught engineering, and wrote several textbooks. I too got to be a very good proofreader thanks to some summer work working with him. But I think, I think back to math class, right? And, I can solve a problem. It's not good enough to know the answer. You need to show your work. And I think in that scenario, your son did to show the learning journey is where the value is. I mean, sometimes it's getting the right answer. And Hugo, you may or may not agree with this, but I think the learning journey is the most important part of this. So
I
here's my
totally
first draft. Here's my edits. I asked my mom for feedback. Here's the feedback she gave me. Here's the things that I agreed with and the things that I didn't.
Yeah.
And here's what I learned from it. The richness of that experience, I think, demonstrates far more than, here's the final version that I turned in.
I love it. To me, that's like an addendum that you put on any paper, anything that you're turning in, saying, here's what I learned from AI. Here's what I learned externally. Here's where I thought deeper.
Yeah.
I love that as the actual work.
Yeah.
More than the research.
I mean, Hugo, your perspective on that as an academician or as an academic guy.
pretend academic guy. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's really about the learning journey, not about the outcome, not about, like the grade. And this is what I try to tell, especially upperclassmen. They're very concerned about, is this going to get me a good grade? Well, are you going to learn something? Is it going to stick with you? Are you growing in the process is really where my focus is. And I totally agree. I would love to trust my students to engage thoughtfully with AI the way you are discussing, right? Using it as a thought partner, starting with, their original concept, bouncing it back and forth through an AI model or more than one, and seeing how it shifts and changes and moves their thinking forward. At 18 to 22, there's a huge amount of drag, that I got to get back to my PS2, so I'm just gonna short the circuit right here and turn this thing in. They're not, and that's my job, is to kind of show them the richness of engaging with it more deeply. Yeah. But for me, the analogy, what I'm thinking as you're saying this is what I want leaders to do. And engage with it. And I don't know, I'm still very much a neophyte on this journey, Blake. So tell me your thoughts. But is that something that we can coach our leaders to do, and how might we do that?
I absolutely think so. I think one of the challenges to figure out where people are right now. Okay, are you one of those, "Ooh, I'm afraid I'm going to break it, I don't want to touch it" kind of people? Or are you going to, okay, all right, how do I get started?
Right.
Starting point could potentially be different, but the journey is going to be relatively the same. There are some folks that I have coached on engagement just to say, you know what? Start with something small. If you feel compelled to go and do a Google search, a Bing search, a Yahoo search, or something like that, go ask a tool like ChatGPT to find something for you. What you're going to find is the richness of the experience is better than getting a list of links that you then have to wade through only to realize that's not what you were looking for. I can do the same thing in a chat conversation. And so it kind of gets them over the hump of starting. Then there's an opportunity for further coaching to say, have you thought about using it as a thought partner? I had a mentorship call with somebody earlier today, and this young lady I'd talked to 2 or 4 weeks ago. And she said, I got some feedback that I give too much detail when I communicate. I write these long emails, sending it to an executive, and he wants a shorter version. And I'm like, okay, well, have you ever heard the term bluff? I mean, you
Yes.
all worked in and around government. You've probably heard the term bluff. Bottom line up front, okay? So ask chat to be your thought partner and say, hey, look, I've gotten this feedback. Here's something that I want to write. What are some ways that I could do this more brief, yet still get the same point across? She said it has been a phenomenal experience learning how to do that. And now she just puts the summary up front and then says, if you want all the sorted details, boom. And it's what she was originally going to write. So she kind of gets both, and that way, whoever's the reader is, they know they only have to read this, but if they want more, they can keep going.
And it doesn't take her any more time
No.
than what she was doing already.
Exactly.
And so she better serves her leadership while getting it done just as quickly, right?
Yes. And she's learned a lot in the process about herself too.
Right.
Exactly.
Can I give another example that I think potentially could work? A lot of times leaders are really reluctant to have difficult conversations because, it's easy. I find it's easy for me now because I've had so many hard conversations. I know the words that I need to use with this person to get to craft a message that they can hear, that they can grow from. But if, the 20 years ago me wouldn't have any idea where to start about how to have that conversation. So I'm thinking I might be coaching leaders to say, ask chat to give you some options. How might I have this conversation? It may not give you like the perfect thing, but it's going to get you to think, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about doing it that way. I hadn't thought about framing it this way.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, maybe now I put that into my words. Or you kind of get different perspectives, just like you would if you were sitting down with me as your coach and saying, okay, what's another way you might say that? How might they think about it when you say it that way? And just letting them rehearse it, practice it, shape it, polish it. Chat can do that for you if you are patient and you know how to ask the question and keep at it.
Absolutely. No, and I think you all know, any part of a coaching process is exploring options, right?
Yes.
And you as the person who's got to take ownership of it, you know which ones feel like you know which ones sound like you. And it's easy to weed out the ones that don't. So anyway, Jen, you were going to say something. Sorry.
No, I love all of this. And I totally agree because what can happen, right? Leaders don't necessarily know about different feedback mechanisms or different communication styles. We do as coaches, and chat, whichever AI model, can be that partner in helping you without even the terminology of this is a feedback style, right? It can help you frame those things. The caution I would throw out there, and Blake, you said this, it doesn't eliminate the human element. And that's where coaching and additional support can get you to really think through a situation and ask, how have you engaged this person? What challenges might you anticipate in having that conversation? And, what feelings is this or thoughts is this bringing up for you as the leader about to deliver that? All of those are key elements in having difficult conversations. So great starting point.
Yeah.
But as you said, not like the be all end all. There's still a human element because we're dealing with people.
Absolutely. Well, and I think we've all been in a situation where you say something to someone and maybe you said it the wrong way and all of a sudden their body language shifts to one of significant discomfort. And then your reaction is to immediately go, oh, geez, did they take that the wrong way? Maybe I said it the wrong way. Now suddenly you're uncomfortable. And it takes what was an uncomfortable situation and makes it uncomfortable squared. And, and then how do you back yourself out of that, right? With the human being in front of you. And so the human element is still a real thing.
So what advice would you give leaders? And what advice do you give leaders as a coach and an expert in this space? What advice do you give leaders on embracing AI, learning from AI, and developing their teams?
Figure out where you can start. Start somewhere. Get your mindset right about the capabilities. Think of it as a person. And if you're not comfortable just jumping in and trying things, you can always delete the conversation if you don't like it. Make sure you're not training the model along the way. Important information security tip that me as an InfoSec guy, I should have said that at the beginning.
How do you train the model?
Or not, or try not to train the model.
Yeah.
Try not to train the
I
model.
just talk to it. I don't know. Am I
Yeah,
training it?
well, I don't know about Claude and Perplexity, but there is a little tick mark in the settings in ChatGPT that says do not train the model for everyone else, which it just basically keeps your chat conversations to you and not sharing them with the world. Now, I mean, of course, there's a certain amount of trust that OpenAI has actually programmed the platform to respect that, and I'm going to trust that it would, because there's a lot at stake if it doesn't. But still, even then, if you want to be really, really sensitive to it, speak in generics, right? Mm-hmm. I have this friend, Bob. Bob works at company XYZ, and here's the scenario. And, you can learn enough from the situational awareness of it to be able to solve your problem. I mean, how many times do we do that in other areas of our life? Or, mm-hmm. Jen, you and I could have a call. Hey, I've got this friend. His name's Jim, right? Whatever the case may be. Yeah, exactly. But understand where you are, understand what your adoption profile looks like, and get started, right? Experiment with it. I did that almost 3 years ago when the tool first came out. First few things I tried were an unmitigated disaster. I then figured out how to work with it. And what I learned very quickly is that ChatGPT is not an order taker. It really is much better suited to be a thought partner. And the better the input, the better the output. But again, if I don't get what I want out of it, I still have to look in the mirror and make sure that I have asked it for the right things and given it enough context. And understand that the models that are sitting behind the tool are like me asking one set of friends for an opinion about a matter. So maybe I ask my work friends about a situation, I get a certain amount of feedback. Well, then if I go over and I talk to a bunch of church friends about that same issue, I'm liable to get a totally different set of feedback. The different models, I think, are analogous to those scenarios. So it's just being aware of that, understanding of that, and navigating it, and not thinking to yourself that you're going to go from 0 to perfect in one step. It's a journey. It's a journey of 1,000 miles, and it happens one step at a time, just like the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Can I just say,
hire a coach too, if you can.
So this is how, as a leadership coach, how I want to start developing that muscle group, right? I want to practice some more on how I can use the tool with my clients to be there when I'm not, right? It doesn't replace the conversations we have, but I can't be there 24/7 when my client, is heading into a difficult conversation or has a challenging situation. So the practice I need to do beforehand is, if I recommend to my client that they try this thing, what is a reliable thought partnership they might get out of it? So that's how I kind of want to start building my muscle group. And then with the aim of eventually being able to say to a client, here's an interesting way you might use an LLM as a thought partner when you find yourself challenged in this way, right? And I'm not exactly sure yet. I've got to do some more thinking on this, but the meta piece for me is, this is a tool that I can develop that may help my clients when they can't reach me or they're working on building some new skills.
And Blake, tell us or share with us how people can find you. And if I'm not mistaken, you're doing some work to create some models like this, right?
I am. I'm building some frameworks around, information and experience and the intersection between those things, as well as, really just understanding how can people engage the tools. There's a body of work that I'm calling, for lack of a better term, AI-enabled leadership, right? If you're on that leadership journey, how do you engage some of those tools? Again, it's a deeply personal journey for a lot of the reasons that we've talked about here. But I think it's a valuable one for people to engage upon. In terms of engaging with me, I can be found on Instagram at Influence Leadership Edge. I think I'm on LinkedIn as Blake H, depending upon whether you're within 1, 2, or 3 connections of me. But
and we'll include that in the notes here, so we'll make sure that our listeners can find you and follow up more on this topic for
Absolutely.
sure.
Sorry for the barking dogs in the background there.
Hey, this is part of life, right? That's not chat in the background.
No, it is not.
This is a dog lover podcast, so
there you go.
Indeed. Well, Blake, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today and having this really enlightening conversation. You've opened my eyes as I kind of walked blindly into the AI world, and I know I'm not using it fully the way that I can, as intentionally as I can. So
thank you for the opportunity to be here. And if it's a consolation, I mean, look, you could have a great assistant that you could probably never use fully either. So don't criticize yourself too deeply here. It's an opportunity to use it as a lever, as something to give you some capacity back. I think person that I worked with down in Houston said it best when she said that the tool has put her in a position of saying yes to more things that she used to say no to.
Powerful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Truly a pleasure to have you on here. Hugo, thank you as always. Great to connect with you again. And for our listeners, send us a note. Let us know what resonated from this podcast, what questions you have, and reach out. Just let us know where you are in your leadership journey. Hope you all have a great one.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Jen. Thank you, Blake.
You're welcome. Great to see you. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Ripple Effect Leadership Podcast. If this episode sparked an insight or reminded you of someone, please share it and help forward the ripple. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review so more leaders can find their way here. You can find us on LinkedIn at Jen Brown-Coach and at HF Rodriguez Jr. and more leadership content and coaching tools at journeyofgracecoaching.com. A quick heads up before you go. This podcast and all content shared by Ripple Effect Leadership is for informational and educational purposes only. The opinions and characterizations in this podcast are our own and do not necessarily represent the U.S. government. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment or professional medical advice. If you are struggling, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed mental health provider or call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You don't have to do this alone.